Our webinar today is entitled Accelerating Time to Market Through Improved Engineering to Manufacturing Release. Maintaining the engineering and manufacturing product definitions can be a cumbersome, time-consuming, and error-prone process. This webinar will review how SAP PLM accelerates the release of product information from engineering to manufacturing throughout its life cycle. No matter how you manage engineering data today, you need to get that information into SAP to set up suppliers, order components and raw materials, manufacture, test, ship, and service your products. Learn how available CAD integrations create document structures and engineering BOMs, and then transition to a manufacturing BOM, all in SAP. Review the purpose for each bill of material, what the engineering bill of material is intended to do, what the manufacturing bill of material is intended to do. Here are best practices to effectively create and manage your material masters and bills of materials across the life cycle and earlier in your product development process. Order long lead time components or tools within SAP rather than manual workarounds. Deploy workflow-driven material master completion and manage improved change management across your enterprise. My name is Alan Mendel, Vice President at LeverX, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Before we begin our topic, let me briefly introduce you to LeverX. LeverX helps companies increase business value by leveraging existing investments in SAP solutions. LeverX is an SAP value reseller and SAP services partner, an associated member of the PLM Alliance. LeverX delivers strategic, functional, and technical services in the areas of SAP product lifecycle management, portfolio and project management, and related solutions. LeverX offers SAP solutions, including services for business process and strategic consulting, solution architecture development, implementation planning and execution, application management support through on-site and remote delivery models. In addition, LeverX provides services for SAP mobile application strategy development and implementation, as well as a broad set of SAP technologies, including SAP NetWeaver Workflow, Business Warehouse, and Business Objects. We are pleased to introduce our presenter for today's webinar, Brian Soper, Solution Principal PLM from SAP America. I will also be presenting a short portion of today's session. And then following my comments, David Kramp, Senior Solutions Consultant from LeverX, will do a brief demonstration. Our agenda for today's webinar is improving and accelerating engineering manufacturing transition. I will then speak on no matter how you manage your engineering data, you'll need to get it to SAP. And Dave will provide a demonstration of the handover to manufacturing and best practices. We will then open the webinar to receive some of your questions. If you have a question during our conversation today, please post it to the GoToWebinar question box, and we'll try to deal with all the questions at the end.
So as we look at the SAP environment, we want to make sure that we have the ability to manage all of these different views of the product, whether it's from upfront in the ideation or the bid process, all the way through the service, as we talked about. So how does that look in the conceptual phase or into a variant and configuration piece, the design, the engineering, or as designed bill of materials, and then through the manufacturing. And along with that bill of materials, not only is it just the structure of parts and pieces, but there's a significant amount of data that goes around that, whether it's around compliance or the change objects that say, okay, well, the bills of material are different at different locations based on the timing of engineering change, and how do we deal with that through the change management process or effectivity. So this is what I'm trying to point out through this process is that each one of these areas, not only do they have their own view of the bill of materials, but they're also valid at different times. And so it makes this problem pretty complex. And in doing so, in launching a particular product, each one of these groups needs to start earlier in the process in order to meet their time to market demands. So as we go through today, I'm going to briefly talk to the kind of some generic definitions of bills of material. So I've grayed out a few bills of material that we're not necessarily going to focus on today, whereas the focus is really handing it off from an engineering design bill of materials to the manufacturing bill of materials. And so I grabbed a couple definitions. Whereas the engineering bill is really defined around the system or the use of the product. So what the end consumer or end user is going to see when it has the parts and the components necessary for that product to perform. When we look at the manufacturing bill, it encompasses all of those particular parts and components, but it also encompasses more. There are a number of items that are typically added in the manufacturing bill, whether they're setup materials or whether they're additional items such as glue or weld or tape or anti-seize, a lot of components that typically are not designed in the engineering area and generally aren't necessarily critical to the product's performance. Along with that, the manufacturing bill changes the organization of that information. So it shifts it from an engineering or system definition where we look at, components as how they work together, and a manufacturing bill of materials looks at how they're assembled and generally how they're assembled in a particular location. So many companies that we work with today aren't just looking at an engineering bill and a single manufacturing bill, but as they look at how they're going to manufacture in multiple locations around the world, they might have one product definition, i.e. the eBOM, engineering bill of materials, that will be transferred into multiple manufacturing locations, each of those locations potentially having a slightly unique way to look at the manufacturing bill of materials. So as SAP looks at this particular problem, it becomes more and more complex as the manufacturing world grows, and we want to move, from kind of left to right and perform these or create and manage these bills of material. So the way the SAP looks at this, say, the traditional view from left to right is, we work on the functional requirements and then we move, through the CAD definition. The CAD definition leads to an engineering bill of materials. An engineering bill of materials leads to a manufacturing BOM. And then we take that manufacturing BOM, put it in production, and we create a specific production bill of materials. Well, the reality is today we can't do those steps one at a time. We have to overlap those items. As was mentioned earlier, manufacturing BOM is typically what's used to do manufacturing planning as well as supply chain and procurement. So those particular organizations are buying materials and planning for materials not off the engineering bill of materials, but off the manufacturing bill. So as we look at companies who are trying to shorten their time to market, they want to be able to access that information and deal with long lead items and difficult to procure items very early in the process. Or they want to look at other aspects of it and saying, where is the most efficient way or place to build this product? And in order to do that, they need to start their manufacturing bill of material very early.